All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Meredith Gibson, and I am the Media and GIS Director at the Institute for Public Strategies, and I'm going to be here today just to moderate this session. I would like to welcome everybody to the URISA Climate and Community Resilience Committee webinar series. Today's topic is an overview for applying ArcGIS Story Maps to facilitate collaboration and knowledge sharing. I believe this is the 10th webinar we've hosted in 2024 so far, as we continue to share resources with the geospatial community. Our presenter today is Abel Gong. She is the Climate Research Manager at the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative, which is an initiative housed at the University of San Diego. As we begin, just please note that everyone is muted, but we do encourage everybody to post questions in the Q&A during the session. And also note that this session is being recorded and that the recording will be posted to URISA's YouTube channel soon. And with that, I'd like to hand the mic over to Abel. And thank you for being here, Abel.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Abel Gong. I am the Climate Research Manager here at the San Diego Regional Climate Collaboratives. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm going to just share my screen really quick so everybody can see my presentation. So thanks, Meredith, for that lovely introduction. As you heard, our session is called An Overview for Applying ArcGIS Story Maps to Facilitate Collaboration and Knowledge Sharing. And so I'm going to start by giving just a quick overview of the San Diego County for those of you who aren't fully aware of our location and the climate change impacts that we have. Then I'll go into a little bit about the Climate Collaborative's role here in the San Diego region, as well as my role. And then we'll jump into our story maps. So the San Diego region is the southmost county in California. It has a pretty unique location because of its borders. So we have the international border from US to Mexico here on this north-south boundary here. We also have very diverse terrain and habitats, or ecosystems, I guess. So we have these beautiful mountains right here, as well as desert habitat. We have the coast, which is what I mainly focus on here at the Climate Collaborative. And then we also have chaparral in between, a bunch of different transitional ecotones. The San Diego region is home to 3.3 million people, which means that it's a pretty bustling county. We have cities as well as suburban and urban areas, so also diverse amount of, I guess, social habitats, you could say, and mainly concentrated in this area right here and along the coast. We have 19 local governments, including 18 cities in the county, as well as special jurisdictions, and then 18 federally recognized Native American reservations represented by 17 tribal governments. I believe that is the most in a single county in the continental US. And then, yeah, as I said before, special jurisdictions like we have the Port of San Diego, the airport, transportation agencies, such as SANDAG, our planning agency, and we have the Navy and several bases peppered around the county. So as you can see, the San Diego region is a pretty diverse place for, it's also the most biodiverse region in the continental US. It's very bustling in terms of economy and social, very diverse. At the end of the 21st century, so by 2100, I guess, or by the end of the 21st, yeah, San Diego County will experience temperature and intensity increase from 20 to 50%. So climate change is happening and it's being felt very quickly here in the region. I know that this is probably my hottest summer living here in my 7 years of living here. Precipitation will remain highly variable. We are what we call a Mediterranean climate, so we experience dry summers and wet winters, but the precipitation really fluctuates in between and also is dependent on our El Nino seasons and our La Nina seasons, which are just more wet and less wet, and they span throughout the decade. But the frequency and intensities of these storms will increase. So we saw this recently, actually, back in February. We had a really intense flooding event that displaced several people, including those very close to me. We had to roll out emergency funds for folks who had their homes just completely flooded and destroyed because we don't have the infrastructure for that sort of intensity of rainfall that maybe like a different area that experiences rainfall more often would have. Um, by the end of the 21st century, we will also see an increase of wildfire risk and drought. I know that drought is a huge issue that we experience here in California, as well as wildfire. I think the intensity and the frequency of wildfire is pretty obvious as somebody who's lived in California my whole life. Um, yeah, wildfire has become pretty frequent and normal thing, unfortunately, for us here. And then lastly, sea level rise will rise by at least 3 feet, increasing flooding events. So we are at sea level. Different areas of the world experience rising sea level differently. So depending on the geography of the area, communities may experience more sea level or less sea level. But for us, that's 3 feet, which is pretty intense. I think that I live pretty close to the beach actually, so I think that by 2100, if sea level rises by at least 3 feet, I'll be a little bit closer to the beach, which is a little concerning. So at the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative, we approach these climate impacts from an equity first lens. So this is just a chart that sort of illustrates that, how these different climate impacts sort of are exacerbated or affect communities differently. And usually this includes like communities of lower income, communities of color, etc. And so we approach these issues with this in mind, recognizing that communities of color, lower income communities, communities that have been pushed out of historically and environmentally favorable environments will be holding the brunt of these climate impacts. So I guess we can start from the top for wildfire. Oops, oh my God. Oh, geez. Okay. Amplifies inequities of community resilience after disaster. Air pollution is a huge issue. We see higher rates of asthma in people of color. And so this can cause a lot of hospitalizations, especially for young children who experience asthma. And it's essential workers, such as farm workers who work outside all day and can't afford to take a day off after a wildfire where the smoke is really bad. For drought, we have impacting ecosystems and food systems, which will leave homeless people, agricultural workers, and food insecure populations, so people who can't afford to maybe buy food or maybe they grow their own food, leaves those populations particularly vulnerable. As for sea level rise, coastal erosion will cause displacement for coastal communities and people will start moving inland. And this can cause a lot of effects because we already have the displacement of people, but also we have people moving inland who can maybe afford to buy land, pushing out those who have historically been there for a while, pushing them further inland or into less favorable areas. For extreme heat, those who can't afford AC work outside again or rely on public transportation may be most affected by extreme heat. People with health conditions, homeless people, elderly, youth populations who maybe like during the summer, children don't have school, don't have access to that AC. They'll be especially vulnerable. And I think we are seeing that pretty prevalently in this summer this year. And then finally, precipitation, as I said before, of this example of our past flooding event. In addition to that, precipitation can impact water quality, which affects the food system, will leave hen-house people, especially vulnerable to vector-borne diseases, and those without shelter will lose a lot of their possessions as well. All right, so as I said before, this is only getting worse through the years, unfortunately. I think this slide was actually made before our big flooding event back in February, so the headlines are only getting more frequent. So in addition to taking an equity-first approach, we at the Climate Collaborative also take a regional approach. That being, we don't necessarily view our jurisdictional borders as a challenge. We embrace them and encourage collaboration and facilitate that collaboration cross-jurisdictionally, including across the international border. The benefits of this is that the impacts of shocks and stresses extend beyond our social borders, because at the end of the day, that's just what it is, a line that was socially determined by people. Addressing these integrated risks definitely requires a regional scale effort. So addressing this problem as a whole instead of having communities who can afford it benefit from it. And the most effective resilience building initiatives are multi-sector with strong partnerships. So when we go together, we go stronger. And we have seen great success with this, taking this regional approach, especially cross-jurisdictionally, especially across the border as we're at the international border, as we're seeing more recently with our more recent projects. And so, yeah, this is just a chart of some of our multiple shocks and stresses. I think I've addressed a lot of these already, maybe. And so we tackle both adaptation and resilience, climate adaptation and climate resilience at the Regional Climate Collaborative. So I'll just go over those definitions really quickly. Climate adaptation is the adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climate stimuli or their effects, which moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. And climate resilience is the capacity of an entity, an individual, a community, an organization, or natural system, for example, to prepare for disruptions, to recover from shocks and stresses, and to adapt and grow from a disruptive experience. So we take a multi sort of strategy approach, a regional approach, and an equity-first approach to climate change and its impacts. As I said before, we do an equity-first approach, and so this is an example of our equity framework, and this really ties into our story maps because our story maps allow us to create accessible information for the communities. So as you can see here, phase one is to explore, define, and initiate. So exploring the problem, the issue, try to define it, and initiate the project. We assess vulnerability, so which communities are most impacted by this particular problem. We define the framework and strategies. And then finally, we implement, monitor, evaluate, and adjust as according to the different feedback that we receive through outreach engagement. And then we are always learning how to better our processes. So it's a very cyclical process. So at the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative, our mission is to connect the region to advance climate change solutions that mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. And we envision a region that is prosperous and resilient and are committed to maintaining a high quality of life and fostering a green and growing economy with an equitable and unified approach. So we are made up of several different, I think most of our cities are a part of our membership, as well as the special agencies, as well as nonprofit academic institutions, um, and some for-profit groups as well. And so we bring people together to do this collaborative work that is equity first, cross-jurisdictional, and from a regional approach. We do this through intentional trust building. So we get people together through our networking events. We acknowledge these unique challenges in our working groups and in our talks at these events. We create safe spaces for problem solving through our working groups, as well as our various projects. And we support this shared vision of advancing climate solutions. Additionally, we build regional capacity. So our staff provides resources and research that we give out to our practitioners as well as community members. We provide technical assistance. We elevate regional leadership. So we have an advisory board. We have subcommittees that help us tailor our programming to bolster current projects and regional leadership. We leverage our strategic partnerships. So we're part of broader networks such as ARCA. I can't remember what it stands for off the top of my head, but it's basically all of the climate collaboratives within California that come together, and our members can be a part of that as well. And lastly, we provide regionally responsive research, which you'll get to get a taste of through our story maps. This is just some of our core programming so that you can understand a little bit more of what we do. So our core programming or research falls under these 4 different buckets. So energy resilience, coastal resilience, climate smart water, adaptation, planning, and regional assessment. We'll be touching on these first 3 in our story map exploration today. So this is just a few of SDRCC's story maps, but I do think that these are the most impactful of all the ones that we have. So I'll be walking you all through each one, and we'll take a look at sort of what we use our story maps for, what kind of features are available, and how this has helped our network. So we'll start first with the Energy Resource Hub here. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this in the chat if you all would like to follow along. Here's the first one. So this is our Energy Education and Resource Hub for the San Diego region. We noticed a gap in knowledge when it came to energy resilience due to the fact that many folks who work in the climate space are often teams of 1 or 2 at cities and other smaller organizations or smaller departments. And so our goal with this story map is to compile information for folks who maybe don't have the time to look through really technical jargon, really dense reports, and provide them with resources to help them bolster their energy knowledge. So this is applicable for folks who are in cities, who want to learn more about REACH codes and building codes, or for folks who are just interested in learning more about energy. And I don't do our energy programming, so I don't really know too much about the actual jargon and technical stuff about this, but and we are doing a makeover of this story map as soon as we get a new energy program manager on board. That's one of the great parts about these story maps is that you can edit them in real time and just refresh them and update them. I know that, for example, I'm gonna just show my our website here. Our website is run through the university and it requires a few steps for approval. But with story maps, we can moderate and update right on the spot. And that's really great for us when we just want to make a quick little change. and we can keep these up to date. Even though this was published first back in 2022, we still have some events under the training and workshop session that should be up to date. Yeah, so this is updated as for our August and September programs or webinars and programs that are coming up, as you can see here. So yeah, this is just some introductory language. We have our trainings and workshops located here. As you can see, we have different regional events as well, and statewide partner events. So this is a great way to just compile into a database all of the different events that are upcoming as they relate to energy, which is great. And then we have some information about energy code compliance here. And then some resources. So in addition to creating our own summarized language, we always provide folks with resources. Same thing here with the REACH codes. And these are also updated to, oh, I think this might be, oh, never mind. We'll see some maps in the other ones. This is some zero net energy resources, and then we have a regional case study database. So one thing that we do at the Climate Collaborative to bolster our regional leadership is create these research case studies that, here, let me click on one of these. These research case studies basically highlight one of our members and summarize their projects, lessons learned, best practices, things like that. So I think this is one from back in 2022. There are the lessons learned. And so story maps provide a pretty dynamic view for like a landscape overview of a certain subject. You can see we were able to put the pins in different places where the case studies were, which is really fun. So that is the Energy Hub, and then our sources. We'll go next to our water and equity nexus story map. So this is one that I worked on. I actually worked on this after it was published. I think I was first hired right when this got published, and then we did a refresh of it a couple of years later. As I said before, it's really great that story maps can be living documents so that we can continue to keep our resources fresh, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel, make a new one, and sort of just repeat what we were saying before. I can just take the outdated information and update it to include new information or the most up-to-date information in here. So for example, let's see here. I think I updated one of these maps. I think some of the maps had changed, and so I had to redo the layers. We also included some of our, let's see, I think it's in here. We included in this update a bit about agriculture in San Diego. So before, when this was first published, this this story map just sort of focused on water in general, but in the, I guess, 2 years that it hadn't been updated, we had an intern who focused on the water and agriculture nexus. And so I was able to include that information in here as an additional resource. And so, yeah, this is her case study on water and agriculture in the San Diego region. Feel free to take a look at that if you would like. And And so I was able to add a little bit more about agriculture. Um, and there's also some stuff about our binational. Let's see if I can find that. Here. Yeah, we added more information about the US-Mexico Tijuana watershed impacts, since it was a research topic that we sort of shifted to after the initial publication of this story map. And it just allowed us to have a more robust overview of water and equity for people who are interested in learning more about the water and equity nexus in our region. Because, I mean, as I mentioned before, drought is a huge issue, and precipitation is a huge issue in our region. So more and more cities will start to look to us, or more and more organizations will start to look to us for this information that they can access sort of quickly and accessibly. Again, these are the some different case studies with the location pins. I absolutely love these kinds of maps because it allows me to see visually where these different case studies took place. Pure Water San Diego, that's happening right outside my house, actually. It's causing a lot of backup and traffic, but I know it's for a good cause. And then for the setting the stage for future action, we were able to add a few more case studies because so much had happened in the 2 years since its publication. So we were able to add a couple of more projects that were underway. And then, as always, we have our resources here at the end for further learning. This is a great resource if you're interested in learning more about the San Diego region. This is a program that's housed at the organization that the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative is housed at. It provides really quick snapshots of how we're doing in the region of all these different social and environmental indicators. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then we also have some funding opportunities. We haven't been able to update it since its last update, so these are a little bit out of date, but if we did want to, we could create a more living document than this. All right. We'll move on to the network analysis story map and the cost of inaction toolkit. These sort of fall hand in hand with each other. They are the deliverables of a project that I'll show you here called the San Diego Region Coastal Resilience Roadmap. And so this Coastal Resilience Roadmap was a 2-year project that we developed that basically brought together the entire region. We did a whole landscape analysis of the current projects happening in San Diego as they related to coastal resilience, and we put them all into this really great report and living actions database. So it's here, I'll show you this too, since it's not really related to the story maps, but this is another way that we have created cohesion and collaboration in our region is through this database of just this living document of projects that are currently underway or things that people want to happen in the region. They're all in this database as they relate to coastal resilience. So the network analysis story map was the sort of first phase of our project. As you remember, in the equity first sort of process, phase 1 is to identify the problem. And so this was identifying and exploring the problem of coastal resilience. What is it about coastal resilience that people sort of diverge from? Do people have differing views? What kind of projects are out there? Things like that. And so we explored this question. This was actually intended to be an internal story map. Our project team sort of put it together so that we could keep track of our visualizations and our data. But it ended up being so robust that we ended up publishing it for the public and getting people to understand, what is the landscape of our coastal resilience scene? What are the potential roles that our stakeholders might have? And so we always start off with an introduction, trying to set the stage for people who maybe don't have as much content knowledge as people who are constantly in the scene. We have our question. So this is more of like a formal report than it is a resource hub like the other two. We have some introductory language. Oh, I just realized that I didn't share this one. That's for this one. And then, yeah, as Danielle said before, the links will be provided after the seminar's over. We have our methodology here. So we made a survey to answer the question of what does coastal resilience look like in the region, basically. This is our methodology. So here you can see this is more of a very visual, graphic sort of story map. Doesn't really do the whole map thing that I guess story maps were intended to do, but that's what makes story maps really unique, is that you can rely really heavily on the maps and the geographical data, the spatial data, or you can use it purely as a dynamic report style. And so this was our definition of coastal resilience that we gave to folks. We used the slider. This is typically used for before and after maps, I think, but we used it for to compare results of when we gave people before we gave people a definition of coastal resilience, how many of them worked in coastal resilience, and then after. And so many folks were a little bit confused about the definition of coastal resilience. Here is some diagrams. So this is more like this is more like a hybrid presentation and a report, which I really like because it keeps people's attention. And then we'll get down here. Oh yeah, we do have some maps in here. Again, you can tell that we really like these like pins for the case studies because we use them all the time. And so this is really interesting because I ran these analyses for network analysis, which is basically trying to compare organization type to their responses. And see how closely related each organization type answered. So I did that in a different software. I did that in R, so I was like coding and all of these things. But then we were able to export the figures and make them really pretty and include them in this story map. So story maps aren't just restricted to map data. They're not just restricted to whatever native results are within ArcGIS. You can also use them cross-platform in a way through JPEGs and PNGs, which creates a really cool, dynamic way of visualizing data and commenting on data as well as you go through the story map. So you can see here, this is for coastal retreat. People have pretty similar views on coastal retreat by sector. See, I'll just scroll through this really quickly. And I'm always happy to answer any questions about the story maps either during our time here or beyond. Let's see, scroll past this a little bit. Then we have some language about the equity of coastal resilience. And this is where it gets really interesting because we weren't really planning on, or we were planning on addressing equity in our in our project, but there were some really interesting results. Did I already pass it? Oh, I might have, yeah. So we found that a lot of people actually didn't know too much about, oh, maybe it's just in here. Yeah. Half of respondents claimed to know of no projects or a couple projects that spanned the US-Mexico border, and then 38% only knew a few projects. And then 81% of respondents didn't know of any projects or a couple projects as they related to like inequity, dismantling historic inequities, which is really interesting. And that spurred our thought for the next story map. So let me just make sure that I caught everything here. We have some next steps. So again, this was only phase 1 of our project, identifying the problems and trying to find the gaps of knowledge, and then sharing it with everybody. So we have some suggestions for further action. We actually did end up supporting cross-sector engagement and cross-jurisdictional and regional engagement with some further initiatives that came after this. But onto the cost of an action toolkit. I'll try to glide by this pretty quickly so we have time for questions. This is my pride and joy. This is the latest story map that I worked on, came out last year. And as I said before, the sort of inspiration for this came from this gap in knowledge of folks not knowing about the coastal resilience projects beyond just what they were working on, and really tapping into that social aspect of coastal resilience. I think that it's oftentimes people really think of coastal resilience as sort of a coastal thing, that being like maybe 1 to 3 miles from the beach, when in fact it is a whole region issue. And so this story map aims to tackle that and sort of dispel that narrative that coastal problems are just for people on the coast, because it's more than just that. We have inland communities who travel to the beach when it gets really, really hot because they don't have AC. And so they need to travel to the beach to just cool off, but there's no public transportation infrastructure, for example. We have people from all over the world who travel the ocean for trade. And so the coast is really important for our economy. And so being resilient actually keeps our economy going. San Diego is a huge beach town, ecotourism. We need to keep our beaches alive so people keep coming back, keep recreating in our area. And not to mention the important cultural importance it has on our indigenous communities, for our indigenous communities. So we always start by setting the stage, who the San Diego region is as a whole region. This is, I really like this because you can put different layers on maps and you can sort of compare. This is like different roads, and this is like the different jurisdictions as well as Native American reservations. So you can kind of flip back and forth and see. So we have, with each scroll, you can see that we show a different map to see really how diverse across different fields San Diego is. Biodiversity hotspot. As I said before, we're the most biodiverse county in the continental US. So you can see the diversity of our habitats here. This is our littoral cells, so the sediment flow of our region. And then another great thing about this is that I didn't even have to make this map. This map already existed. Let's see if I can get this to work. Explore the maps. There it is. Yeah, so great part is I could just embed a map that already existed if it was publicly available to embed. And then this is a historic redlining map that we included in here to sort of drive home the point that coastal resilience, even though may seem like it affects a certain group of people, maybe the people that were there before were historically pushed out from those areas. So yeah, this is a really cool map. Then we go into the climate impacts of coastal resilience, sort of all the different intersecting issues that we face. Extreme heat with what I mentioned before about inland communities having a tough time getting to the beach because they don't have access to AC during this hot weather. Water is also really important. We think about our dam water flowing out into the ocean, the Tijuana River estuary, flowing back and forth between the US and Mexico in 3 different places. Sea level rise, this is another map that I embedded in here through NOAA, so I didn't really have to do the work. And it's an interactive map, so it can model sea level rise, create different scenarios, and also these are really interesting vulnerability indicators that they put in there. There's some really great NOAA maps and models that I really, really like. And then we get to redefining our coastal communities. So this is where we sort of hit people with have you ever considered that our coastal communities aren't just people on the coast, they're actually people inland too, who care about the coast and use the coast. This is another interactive map that I pulled from this time from Cal Enviroscreen. And we included some local examples. This is where we get into the co-benefits, so economically important, recreationally important, culturally important. This is a historic map of where the Kumeyaay people, which are the indigenous people to San Diego, where their territory used to be. And you can see that the US-Mexico border cuts right into that. And there was actually a lot of political turmoil and fight to get these 2 sides united again. I think that wasn't until the 90s, I want to say. And then we did these really awesome videos, these video testimonies. I am going to try playing this. Let me just share my sound really quick. We'll listen to this one, or let me get one where everybody is talking. So, or actually we'll do this one. This one is a quick one. So we did these video testimonies to make this story map more dynamic, but also to really drive the story part of StoryMap in this deliverable. We wanted to put the people in the coast so that anybody who explores our project and its deliverables sees that, you know, this is more than just a scientific issue. This is a community issue and needs to be community driven. So this is Ty, and he's going to talk about the indigenous point of view.
The abolishment of environmental racism in its entirety. It should be replaced by respect, empathy, and understanding. Without these core elements, the work will never truly be inclusive. Regardless of the further enhanced problems any organization choose to tackle, it'll never be enough if we cannot end this system of oppression. I've heard Indigenous voices speak on the matter of climate change. I have seen Indigenous leaders travel with the understanding that they would have their moment to raise awareness on the concerns for the land and the ocean, only to be told, we'll have 10 minutes before the event starts for you to do your land acknowledgement. I will continue to do the work alongside folks who are committed to action, and I hope if you have the drive and the means to protect nature, I'll meet you, and we'll share in this work together.
So that's just one example of the many video testimonies that we have in here. It's super cool that we're able to embed video into story maps, because it just makes it super dynamic. And some people are more auditory learners, and so this allows folks to explore through a different medium the science that we are trying to educate people on. So yeah, this is another one as they talk about biodiversity in this one. This one's more on the governance side of things. And then this one is like an overall video. I really like this one. We go into a little bit more about the multiple benefits of coastal resilience, which we talk about a lot more in our report. Oh yeah, no, this is the governance one. And then at the very bottom, we have our research database. So this is, again, a living database. I update this every 2 weeks. I think the Energy Hub gets updated every month, but I do this one every 2 weeks. It has a plethora of sea level rise reports, maps and models, databases, and project builders. So anybody who is in our region or beyond, actually, because a lot of these are really broadly applicable to be like national or even international. So anybody who wants to take a look and like explore the resources has it right at their fingertips. And then, of course, we have our references, which have some really awesome story maps in here too. Like this one is an awesome story map by the Food System Alliance here. There's another one in here called Cooler Communities, probably, that is also an awesome story map. So all this to say, I really love story maps, and they are super dynamic, super flexible in their application and use. And we've gotten some really great feedback from people who have used our story maps before as a learning tool, as a resource hub, and as just a way to learn more about the work that we do. And so I'm going to end this presentation by dropping our resources page in the chat for you to look at some more. There's definitely some more resources in here that are in the form of story maps. We did our big 2020 10-year anniversary annual report in a story map, and I think there's a couple more in there, so be sure to check it out. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'll open it up to any questions.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Abel. I love the story maps, and I also use the story map platform for projects that I work on. You talked about the benefits of using like that one particular platform. You use the ESRI Story Map platform. What made you decide to use that one? Did you look at any other platforms for like presenting your information?
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of accidental, I guess. My boss and I are spatial data people by like training. So we both did our master's in sort of spatial analysis. And so story maps was always like there for us. We're always using story maps, so we didn't really think of any other way. And I think that's what makes it really interesting, right? To be in a field where you're not really practicing what you did in school. Because like I did my master's thesis on like shark migration. So like I don't really use that in my work, but it's times like this where our brains get really creative because we've used this tool so many times before. And we're like, oh yeah, like it just feels natural to be like, okay, yeah, let's just use a story map without a second thought.
Mm-hmm. And so for the, did you use, I mean, any of the actual GIS tools to create like, some of those maps, or was that created by someone else?
Yeah, so a lot of the maps that we use are pretty much like pre-made layers and things like that. There will be times where we'll like add a buffer to something but it's really rudimentary. We don't do any intensive like quantifiable like spatial analysis, but we are capable of doing so with our skill set. I think if we all put our heads together, we'd be able to do it. But yeah, it's mainly for visualization purposes.
Well, I know that you had kind of talked about this a little bit, but I also work in the San Diego region, especially down in the South Bay, and the pollution issue. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, in San Diego, a lot of pollution that originates due to broken pipes on the Tijuana side of the border. A lot of that sewage is flowing out into the Pacific Ocean, and for the beach communities down in South San Diego, such as Imperial Beach, it's creating like a lot of health issues, a lot of economic issues because, tourists aren't coming to these beaches because they are constantly closed due to water advisories. And so I was just wondering if if the collaborative was going to kind of like broaden, I guess, maybe the scope of work to further address that issue.
Yeah, so let me just pull this up really quickly. So I want to say 2 years ago, we launched the Binational Resilience Initiative with the San Diego Foundation. They're a philanthropic organization. We are one of the lead partners on this initiative. It's a climate initiative to address coastal resilience across the US-Mexico border. We just announced our second round of grantees, which is really awesome. We had our first round this past year, and they did some really, really awesome work cross-border in coastal resilience education, cleanup, biodiversity monitoring, and just strengthening those partnerships. So the requirement for this binational resilience initiative is actually you have to have one US partner and one Mexico partner, and they're expected to collaborate together and work together. And so we are trying to strengthen those cross-border partnerships through this initiative specifically. And we are planning to add all of these projects into our living database that I showed earlier in that Excel spreadsheet. So it's a really awesome initiative. I highly recommend checking out the projects that have been funded and that got funded this year.
Thank you. I can definitely see some opportunities for some data sharing between, on both sides of the border. It's a huge issue. But yeah, I'd also invite other questions from anyone from the audience. Any questions for Abel? All right. So I am just going to, let me just share my screen real quick. I'm just going to go through a little bit some slides here. So, again, URISA, if you are a member of URISA, thank you so much. If you're not a member, just a little bit about the organization. We promote GIS professionals. We have networking events, educational opportunities, and opportunities to develop leadership within the GIS field. So if you would like to check us out, urisa.org. We have a couple of other webinars that are, well, we've got several that are being planned, but two of them that are currently or three of them that are on the calendar. So please be sure to check them out. You can scan the QR code down at the bottom, but the next one is going to be September 7th, excuse me. It's with the USGS Climate Adaptation Science Center. Really excited about that one because it's sort of, again, like a continuation of this conversation that Abel has started with us and using, geospatial, or, not just like geospatial tools, but like that visualization and that presentation that Abel mentioned of using story maps. And then the following month, we've got Beyond the Headlines, the practice and policies to improve the use of GIS for pandemic response and public health. Again, as someone who is in public health, I'm also really excited about that. And then Life of Addresses. That was, oops, I'm sorry. Let's see. I think that was already, August 28th. At 2 p.m. Eastern. So anyway, check these webinars out and register for them. Share them with your network, please. We'd love to have, new voices and just, diverse audience of people attend these webinars. Let's see. Oops. So we have a couple of upcoming URISA programs, the GIS Leadership Academy coming up November 18th through the 22nd in Fort Worth, Texas. Again, check out urisa.org or scan the QR code down at the bottom. And then we also have the virtual GIS Leadership Academy coming up December 2nd through the 6th, and the registration will be opening up soon for that one. And then finally, GIS Pro 2024 is coming up in Portland, Maine. Great opportunity, again, for networking and for learning opportunities. I attended my first one a few years ago in Baltimore. And from there, I did a lot of networking. And actually, I was able to take one of the keynote speakers, and he presented for our coalition actually out in San Diego. So, and with that, please stay connected with us. There's our website, urisa.org. I think we're also probably we're on Facebook and LinkedIn. At least that's where I follow URISA as well. And thank you again so much. Thank you, Abel, for being here and sharing your knowledge and your beautiful story maps. Check them out. And as Danielle mentioned in the chat, we will have the recording available as well as Abel's slides and the links to her story maps. So thank you all for being here. Again, Abel, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. And yes, I'll be sure to send over the links and the PDF of the presentation to you, Meredith.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.